Thank you so much. It's an absolute delight to see a full house in the afternoon. Thank you so much, audience, for being here. And it's a very interesting topic where we see policy making and public perception being there. Uh, Policy making in a democracy is very important, and people are the most important. Nothing is more important than public perception in a democracy. And therefore, when it comes to policy making, public perception is the most important thing that we have to keep in mind. But it's not that easy. That is a very treacherous path that we have to take, both in the governments and also in the boardrooms. So that is something that we have to find out, because any public policy making has to be in the interest of the people of this country. And unless we are able to convince people that it is in the interest of democracy and people and the progress of the nation, it's very important. And as communicators, this is our job. That how do we bring that transparency, that information, and in a language and a manner that people are able to consume it and get convinced of it. So policy making, first of all, let me ask the panel, do you see there is a disconnect between policy making, intent of policy making, and public perception? Some.
Thank you.
It should work.
Should work.
Yeah, that
No? Okay. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually an interesting question, and the answer is yes and no. The reason we say that there is a gap between policy making and public perception, especially in sectors which are highly regulated, like ours, because I represent seed and biotech sector in the country, which is one of the most important contributors to the economy as well as the livelihoods of the farmers. We can go into the examples later, but the short answer is yes and no. And we have seen examples of how well-intended policies might not have struck a right chord with the right set of stakeholders. So I think the panel can also add.
Mandip ji, you have had a long experience in managing it.
See, the question coming to whether there's a disconnect between intent of the policymakers and the public perception. In the last 20 years, I've been through a lot of policy changes, policy campaigns aimed at clean fuels. But I would like to differ a little bit on this. Let's not doubt the intelligence of the policymakers and the intent behind that. It definitely depends on a number of factors how the public perception is impacted. The intent is always good, and they have their ears firmly to the ground. Many a times, there are certain pressures, certain maybe political pressures, certain biases, or certain things, or playing to the gallery what certain policymakers have to do. But they always test the waters. And you would have always seen, they always put out a draft for public consultation. Whenever the government comes up with any policy, a draft for public consultation is put up, and the inputs are invited till a certain date, and they are analyzed by expert groups and on, whatever is there, and then the final policy document is announced. Many a times it also happens that no draft is put out. They just do a selective leak in the media with selected media persons. And then they try to gauge how the different stakeholder groups are reacting to this. So, a lot of effort is made. There have been examples of very successful execution of public policy changes, and there have been examples of failures also in the country. So, each one of them is a case study. We have to analyze it separately, so there cannot be any standard answer to this. It really depends on various factors. What is the will behind that? How much robust the design is? How much robust the communication is? So that the entire execution is successful.
Thank you so much. Aparna ji, do you see, there are great examples of managing public perception. And in a developing an increasingly more complex world, the role of public relations professionals is also changing. Do you see a continuity in that?
Definitely. I mean, first of all, if we look at this, a lot of times there's a disconnect between the policy intention as well as what is being perceived by public at large. To give you an example just in support of the question that you asked, and it affected all of us, which was the COVID-19 vaccination drive that the government ran. When it started, there was a lot of hesitation in the minds of people, but ultimately, each one of us asks a standard question, which is, what is in it for me? Because all of us are different, be it in terms of the age, be it in terms of our, gender, etc. So, everybody has that question in their mind. So from a communications perspective, there is an opportunity wherein you tell each and every stakeholder, and obviously these are masses of stakeholders, that how is a particular policy going to affect you. And also the fact that it has to be backed by data. That is, in my opinion, very, very important. Just to give you some example, again, on the same point that I made, which was the CoWIN app. So, if you remember, we used to have so many vaccinations were administered. Even during the second wave, when it was actually quite difficult for a lot of us, most of the articles mentioned that if you had the vaccine done, then the chances of, a catastrophe was very, very minimal. So, communication from that perspective, a lot of evidence-based communication is very important.
Anchalji, you have seen, how communication professionals have been shaping public opinion. And as the political as well as economic landscape is changing, and so is the world of PR professionals. Is it important for PR professionals to focus only on the communication part? Or do you think they have a bigger role to play?
I think you kind of answered the question when you asked me the question. But yeah, I mean, of course, I think when we started 2 decades ago, you were hired if you could manage the media, you could write a press release, or you could, you were generally good at interpersonal skills. But I think if I look at my peers, in the PR firms or on the Corpcom side or public affairs, I hate to draw the segregation, but if I look at different kind of professions within the industry, I think we've all come a long way. And I think one of the stark differences that I see between a professional entering the industry 2 decades ago to now is that you can't be tone deaf to what's really happening in the world. You have to understand what is the geopolitical reality. You have to understand that you're not creating campaigns, or you're not building perception for one single stakeholder, which is the media. I think it's far more complex now, and that's what makes the job so relevant, which is that you're managing multiple stakeholders, policymakers, which includes the end consumer. So I think definitely the days of vanilla PR professionals just doing communication are over, and I say that with a strong belief that today, if you understand policy and you're not intimidated by it, I think you are doing great service to your own profession, to the organization you work for, and to the industry. So I think it's time to integrate efforts. It's time to embrace what's happening on the policy side, and you have to also understand that it's very different from how typically PR works. But if you understand how a policy campaign will work, I think you can design much better PR campaigns. And I say that by a lot of test and learn that I've done and I've seen across. And I think also as a client now, when I'm hiring a PR agency or I'm hiring for my team, I'm looking for people who bring in that expertise. So I think it's very, very important to embrace what's happening on the policy side and really, like I said, not be intimidated by it.
Thank you. Agriculture, again, sometimes it seems that is stuck in the image or a stereotype that we have always seen. Is it the right time to change that stereotype?
The time has actually been 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So whatever the image or public perception about say, our industry, agriculture or seed or biotech, a common man or a person who has no science background, we can't actually blame them for not having that understanding. But for example, associations like us, that's our job, actually one of our jobs, to ensure that we are talking about the right things, the science behind how agriculture and food is produced, to today's stakeholders as well as tomorrow's stakeholders. That's what we are doing together with communication as the main tool. So we are talking today's stakeholders, consumers, as well as tomorrow's, reaching out to the tomorrow's consumers, stakeholders, policymakers, politicians, whoever it may be. So it's a continuous job, and agriculture definitely needs to be understood in the true sense, backed by science. So that is the most important requirement for communication professionals like us, because our job is actually policy advocacy, and advocacy involves a lot of communication as well.
Thank you. Amandeep ji, policy making involves stakeholder mapping, engaging with them, and the stakeholder universe is very diverse. Any recent example that you can see that it was a very tough challenge to begin with, and it has been implemented successfully? There is no better example than that, and from where we as communication professionals can, take a leaf out.
See, since I've been working in the energy sector and in my entire career, the entire stress, I mean, if I start from the late 90s, the transitioning of Delhi to CNG, that was one of the biggest challenges, which has been successfully implemented. And then subsequently, the industry shifting to gas. But I think a perfect case study with the kind of expanse the entire country is the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, which started off in 2015. And I'll tell you the numbers and entire gamut, because of course I was not directly involved in that, but I've been involved in bits and pieces about that. So I'll tell you what the scenario was in 2015. In 2015, if we look at the entire population of the country, around 125 crores, the number of households maybe around 27, 28 crores, and the number of LPG connections at that point of time was just around 14.5 crores. And what were the other households using? They were using the other polluting fuel. Maybe they were burning wood, they were burning kerosene or others. So when the government had decided, that was in 2015, you remember people used to take LPG connection as something of an inheritance. Our parents probably had stood in the lines to get LPG connections. And imagine the country coming up with a campaign called Give It Up. Give It Up campaign has been a very successful developmental communication campaign. Those of you come from the case study, if you look at the developmental communication theory, this has been one example with Give It Up campaign where it started with endorsement right at the top, from the Prime Minister's level, then enforcing the government officials to do it, then celebrities coming on board. You are being bombarded with SMSs, you are being bombarded with messages. And suddenly in 2015, what we also realized was that government had taken very heavily to social media. So every time you open your Facebook pages or Twitter pages, a link on Give It Up used to come, encouraging you to just click on that if you care for the nation. So it was linked with nationalism, and it was something in the national interest what you're doing. In 1 year, more than 1 crore people gave up their subsidies. And again, so that the intent was, whatever subsidy is being freed up from there, that needs to be diverted to the people who've not been able to use. So if I look at the numbers, and it's all, one has to look at the numbers. So current numbers of LPG connections in the country are double what was there in around 40. So it's around more than 32 crores. And more than 10 crores are being given under Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana only to the BPL families. And that is also direct DBT transfer, which is going to their account, 300 rupees and limited to 12 refills in a year. So around 5,000 crores of subsidy the nation was able to save from that. And effectiveness. So if we look at the background, it was not just about communication. Had the government come on one day announced that yes, we are going to be taking away the subsidy from so many from them, there would have been resentment in the entire country. So they prepared you for that, a solid communication. But it's not just about communication. It starts with the solid design of the campaign. A very solid strong leadership, intent by the leadership to do it, availability of resources to implement that, effective coordination among various stakeholders, regular monitoring of what is going on, and then taking each and every stakeholder on board. So if the entire gamut of the entire campaign is studied piece by piece, it becomes a perfect case study where and you impacted the whole country. I mean, I would see, if we are looking at today more than 30,000 houses, if we look at 21 cents, because of course the numbers have not come in, but census say around 30 to 32,000 households are there, we're already having 32 crore, LPG connections covering, and then 1.5 crores of pipe gas connections are also there. So they've also been a shift where yes, the cities where pipe gas is there, they've been encouraged to take pipe gas so that the LPG can be freed and given to the BPL houses. So entire nation has been impacted at a gross level, and that is something which needs to be studied. Thank you.
Thank you. Aparna ji, because you come from the power sector, energy transition again is a great example of how the political will of the government has gotten translated. There is greater acceptability of it. People are willing to change to renewables. There is a great synergy between the corporate world and the government, and there is public acceptability of it. What are your views?
Definitely. I mean, if we look at the country, we are fast transforming. I mean, looking at the numbers itself, if you look at the installed capacity, it's almost 50% is renewables, and that is the target of the government as well. So from your perspective, you know, from a policy perspective, when the numbers are being talked about in policy as well as the outcome that is happening is very important. You know, one thing that we have to keep in mind is data is something that if you torture data too much, it will confess to any crime, is something that is, you know, a popular saying. But when we back it up with enough data, when we talk about various different scenarios, that becomes very important. So in this scenario, wherein, you know, the energy transition is happening, from communications perspective, both from the government as well as the different stakeholders that we touch upon becomes very important.
Thank you. Aanchal ji, for PR professionals, policy has always been on the back burner. But as things are changing, as the entire landscape and the playground rules of the game are also being changed, do you think there is a primacy that needs to be given to policy over communication, or the campaign mode in which communication players worked, will that continue? If at all there is a need for balance, there is a greater need for, you know, newer technologies being coming.
I think if I get your question right, I think what you're really trying to say is that as policy conversations become more mainstream, how do we really balance confidentiality, complexity, you know, with the compulsion that we have as PR professionals to narrate the story, right? I think that that's where the nuance comes in, right? That how does a policy campaign differ from, say, a typical communication campaign where you're trying to launch a product or you're trying to, you know, mitigate a crisis. I think when it comes to policy, you have to see who will be able to influence your stakeholder. For example, when I was at Amazon, I think what we realized very early on is that just pure brand speak isn't enough, even if you're like a very large brand. I think ultimately what you need is that you need a large cohort of public stakeholders to support what you're saying, and you have to, you know, mobilize the public towards the cause. that you want to champion. And I think what we did was we worked with a lot of MSMEs, right, who were on e-commerce platforms, who were earning livelihood, especially during pandemic, who were fully sustaining their business or had a transition to e-commerce to sustain themselves, right? And then they became the storytellers. And it was a very organic process, right? And we realized that the government heard, right? When there was, during the pandemic, e-commerce deliveries were banned, I think at that point in time, they were, the state governments reviewed their sort of decision to ban e-commerce and restarted it because there was a large number of MSMEs, posting and talking about how they were not able to, reach the consumers, and consumers were complaining about how they were not able to access basic things like, laptop, etc., when they wanted to work from home or study from home. So I think it became a larger consumer campaign, which then led to the change that worked for businesses like Amazon. So I think what I'm really trying to say is that when you're trying to create a perception campaign, which is, speaking to policyholders, it's important to understand who's your stakeholders and who will they listen to. And I think it's very important that when you're trying to shape public narratives or discourse, there is data to support, like she said, what you're saying. You can't really whitewash truth very easily. So I think it has to be backed by data, and you have to have, for example, we work with a lot of, we still do actually work with a lot of advocacy firms, think tanks like our respected colleague here, who can be very, very important, sort of partners to you in this journey. So I think it's very important to understand that, and I think accordingly kind of create the narrative you want to.
Thank you. Time for closing remarks. Raghavanji, do you think, as communication professionals and also people involved in public advocacy, is it the design of the policy that's important?
When it comes to policies, two things are really important. One is the intended benefits. And second is, how do we communicate it to the potential stakeholders in the right manner? And everything else will fall in place. If you are right about these two things, say for example, take our technologies. Technology in agriculture, if it is to be communicated to a common man in simple language, and if the common man understood what are the things, how investments are going into producing the everyday tomato or potato that we eat to make it safe, sustainable as well as nutritious, if that has been communicated well to him or her, half of the job is done. And what are the things that will help people invest in those industries will depend on the policy that is being made. So ultimately it boils down to how well the public understands the science part of it and how this can be complemented by a better policy. So intent and how we communicate it to the public, both are important. Design will obviously fall in place.
Thank you. Mandeep ji, public perception brings credibility and legitimacy to any policy that comes. Are we in a position to shape that public perception, or we should be at a detached?
See, as communication professionals, this is our role. And this stems from the fact that communication is a strategic function. We need a place on the table. We need to be actively involved in the core team, which is designing and executing the entire policy change, policy campaign. Communication professionals have a large role to play in influencing public opinion in favor of the policy. And why not? But it just not be limited to the traditional roles, maybe when we were talking about 20 years ago, the kind of PR professional you used to be hired. We may have a very diverse role to play, be in organizations, be in PR agencies. And the the PR professionals of today need to be comfortable with the numbers, with handling the numbers, to handling the data and the technologies. interpreting the data. Like, for example, I gave you the numbers about the Ujjwala Yojana. The numbers were very important. The impact is in the numbers. Yes, reputation, all these qualitative factors do play a major role. But you have to, but if a PR agency professional, the efficiency of a professional and in changing the public perception is gauged by the actual numbers. The bottom lines are important. We need to be careful that, yes, what has been the change, percentage of change, the numbers. And the PR agencies of today, PR professionals of today need to be prepared and need to be comfortable with handling the numbers and not just talking to the journalists and getting in centimeters in the newspapers. They need to be, again, play a major role in shaping the public profession, the public perception in this regard.
There is also, people say there is a disconnect between boardrooms and policy making.
Sorry, there's a disconnect between?
Boardrooms and policy making. How can we as communication professionals bridge that gap?
I think one thing from boardrooms is also to keep in mind that it's a diverse board. People come from different backgrounds. They have large expertise in their own specific areas. Obviously, these are people who are very learned, but each of them has their own expertise. So just giving you an example from a power sector perspective, because policies are actually quite technical. So from boardroom perspective, I mean, these things as communicators, we have to simplify. So while everybody understands some bits of each of the sectors, but building an expertise takes a lot time. So this is where for us as communicators, it's important to simplify the concepts and also talk about the big picture, because that's very important. I mean, every policy has a big picture in mind. Unfortunately, when it dials down to us people, it gets a little difficult for us to understand what is the big picture. So whenever there are boardroom meetings that are happening, what is the big picture from a company's perspective becomes very important, because every policy will have a clear intent. I know I'm running out of time. So that is something that's important for us communicators to play a part in.
Achalji, the universe of communications is, very dear to you, and nobody knows it more than you. The kind of diversity that you bring from a communications point of view, and also now how the policy landscape has changed over the years, and it is set to change in the coming days. What is your takeaway?
I think we are very short on time, and I could probably write a book on it. And what's fun if I can't after 2 decades, right? So I think a lot is changing, but I think one thing that's the buzzword is AI. And I think just yesterday it was in the papers that some of the big techs and a lot of companies are talking about how the workforce will shrink because AI is coming up, it'll take up jobs, it'll, you really don't need that much of manual intervention, etc. But I think as professionals, if we evolve and we wear the policy hats with a lot more comfort, and we invest in building ourselves as integrated professionals who can actually juggle multiple things and understand the nuances, I don't think AI or anybody can take their jobs. So for example, today where I work, I have worked in a sector which was heavily regulated, which was insurance. Two, I worked in a sector where we didn't want regulation for different reasons, and now I work for a sector where we are really pushing hard for regulations to come in, which is the pet food sector. I think what I've seen is that what strategies I'm trying to develop with, of course, the support of very able agency partners who are present here that I have. I don't think that muscle can be replaced by AI, because we are not just content creators, right? We are creating strategies which don't exist, and we are doing things which have not been done before, and we want outcomes which don't exist. So I think as long as we understand the potential we have, the collective potential we have, I think AI or any other trend can't defeat us. I think that's something that I want to really say, and I really believe in.
Thank you so much. Do we have time for questions? No. Thank you so much, panel.
Okay, we can take 1 or 2 questions at max. So can we pass on the mic over there, please? So we are passing a mic. Give us a second. So we are getting you a mic.
But you please ask. If you're louder.
Sir, in today's digital era, misinformation spreads rapidly, especially on WhatsApp, YouTube, Twitter, and this Facebook. And ultimately, government policies are vulnerable to distortion. My question is, how can governments counter misinformation and build accurate perceptions of policy using digital channels? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad you asked this question. This is a very relevant point as far as, and distortion, yes, in the case of social media, it used to happen earlier also. Whenever any policy decision is taken, there used to be resistance to that policy, and people who were benefiting from the earlier policy used to be resistant to change. There were other times it was spread through certain think tanks probably, or certain policy advocacy groups and all. Yes, social media. It has given us very little time to react. And today, even SEBI has come up with the guidelines that every listed company has to counter any misinformation if it is there in the public domain, which is impacting anything related to the stock price. So they've given us a list of the publications, some media houses in which if it is published in those, you have to counter that. We've been countering that, and I think that has given us, that is one thing. There has been job enrichment in the communication sector in the sense that we have been given very little time to react. And our role has increased to react immediately. So all the social media teams are always on the lookout. We have a lot of tools, the technology, like we are using a software called Quick Matrix to gauge whatever is coming out in the social media relating to our organization. And immediately, if we need to counter that, if something is not in line with the if it's a misinformation, if it is factually incorrect. So I think all the organizations across the board, I'm sure, have today aligned themselves to that requirement. It's not that you issue a press release and it will come in the newspapers next day. Immediately you come up with a rebuttal.